London at the beginning of the 17th century was already a city that felt impossibly alive. Long before skyscrapers, underground railways, or electric light, this was a place defined by movement. People, goods, ideas, and ambitions flowed constantly through its streets. By 1600, London had grown into one of the largest cities in Europe, home to roughly 200,000 people, a number that would more than double within a century. It was loud, crowded, and often dangerous, but it was also magnetic. Everyone seemed to be coming here for something. What survives from this period are paintings, engravings, maps, and written accounts, static images, frozen moments, and yet, when you look closely, you can almost feel the energy trapped inside them. In this video, I use modern AI reconstruction tools to step inside those images, to shift perspective, move through streets, and experience early modern London not as a distant abstraction, but as a living city. This isn't about replacing history, it's about getting closer to it. One of the most defining features of London in the 1600s was the River Thames. It was not just a river, it was the city's main road. Long before bridges were common and streets were reliable, the Thames carried London's lifeblood. Barges moved grain, coal, timber, and stone. Passenger boats ferried merchants, politicians, laborers, and messengers. The river connected London to the countryside, to continental Europe, and to the wider Atlantic world beyond. Standing at the center of all this movement was Old London Bridge. By the 17th century, it had already existed for over 400 years, but it was nothing like the bridges we imagine today. Old London Bridge was a dense, crowded street suspended above the water. Houses, shops, workshops, warehouses, and even a chapel were built directly onto it. From a distance, it barely looked like a bridge at all. It looked like a neighborhood stretched across the river. The bridge rested on narrow stone arches, supported by massive piers. These piers disrupted the flow of the Thames, creating strong currents beneath the arches. Navigating through them was dangerous, especially at low tide. Boats were regularly damaged or destroyed. People drowned, and yet traffic never stopped. The bridge was unavoidable. For centuries, it was the only permanent crossing of the Thames in central London. Life on the bridge was intense. Buildings leaned outward over the roadway, blocking light and trapping smoke. Carts rattled past on uneven stone. Animals, pedestrians, traders, and residents all competed for space. Fires were a constant threat. So was collapse. But generations lived and worked here anyway, because this narrow crossing was one of the most valuable pieces of real estate in England. Beyond the bridge, the city spread outward in every direction. London's streets were narrow and irregular, shaped more by medieval habit than by planning. Timber-framed houses leaned toward each other across the road. Waste flowed openly through gutters. The smell was overwhelming. And yet, this was a city obsessed with growth. Construction never stopped. Every available space was filled. In the western outskirts, however, the city still softened. This is where Buckingham House stood, in the late 17th century. Long before it became Buckingham Palace, it was a private residence on the edge of London, surrounded by open land and gardens. At the time, this marked a boundary. Beyond it lay countryside, fields, air that felt cleaner. It's a reminder that even as London grew denser, its limits were still visible. Then, in September 1666, everything changed. The Great Fire of London began in a bakery on Pudding Lane. What started as a small blaze quickly became uncontrollable. The city was built largely of wood. Streets were narrow. Buildings were packed tightly together. Strong winds drove the flames forward. Fire leapt from roof to roof, street to street. Attempts to stop it failed. Within days, much of medieval London was gone. One of the most haunting images from this event shows the city burning as a continuous wall of fire. Old St. Paul's Cathedral, with its massive stone structure, was consumed. London Bridge survived, but the surrounding city did not. The Tower of London narrowly escaped destruction. Thousands were left homeless. Entire neighborhoods vanished. And yet, the fire also marked a turning point. It forced London to rebuild. Streets were widened. Building materials changed. Brick and stone replaced timber. New regulations reshaped the city. The London that emerged was not safer in every way, but it was different. More ordered, more intentional. Rising above the eastern edge of the city stood the Tower of London. By the 1600s, it had long since outgrown its original purpose. It was no longer just a fortress. It was a symbol, a prison, a treasury, an arsenal. The crown jewels were stored here, royal records were kept here, and some of the most powerful and controversial figures in England passed through its gates as prisoners. The tower represented authority in its most concrete form. Its presence on the riverfront reminded everyone arriving by boat who truly controlled the city. Even in times of political uncertainty, its walls remained. Cheapside, by contrast, represented London's public life. This was one of the city's most important streets, a place of markets, ceremonies, and spectacle. When Marie de Medici processed through London in 1638, Cheapside became a stage. Temporary structures were erected, crowds gathered, soldiers lined the streets. At the center stood the Cheapside Cross, a familiar landmark and gathering point. But beneath the celebration, tension simmered. Religious divisions, political uncertainty, and resentment toward the monarchy were growing. Within a few years, England would be at war with itself. Scenes like this, once meant to project unity and power, now feel fragile in hindsight. Westminster was the heart of that conflict. Seen from across the Thames in the mid-1600s, it was a dense cluster of power. The Palace of Westminster housed Parliament. Westminster Hall hosted courts, trials, and assemblies. Westminster Abbey stood as the spiritual center of the nation, a place of coronations and royal burial. In 1647, this complex stood uneasily between tradition and upheaval. The English Civil War had reshaped the country. The relationship between king and parliament had fractured. Authority itself was being questioned in ways it never had before. Nearby stood the Palace of Whitehall, once the largest royal residence in England. It stretched along the Thames as a vast collection of halls, chambers, and administrative buildings. Kings arrived here by boat. Courtiers gathered here. Government was conducted here. It was the physical center of royal power. Most of Whitehall was destroyed by fire at the end of the 17th century. Today, only the banqueting house survives. A single fragment of a complex that once dominated London's political life. Further upriver stood Richmond Palace, a favored retreat of Tudor and early Stuart monarchs. Rebuilt by Henry VIII, it offered cleaner air and distance from the crowded city. Elizabeth I died here in 1603, marking the end of the Tudor dynasty. Over time, the palace fell into disuse and was dismantled. Its presence now survives only in traces beneath modern Richmond. When you look at London today, It's easy to forget how layered this city really is. Glass towers rise where timber houses once stood. Roads follow paths laid out centuries ago. The Thames still flows, though its role has changed. The bridge crossings are many now. The bottlenecks are gone. But the city's rhythm remains. What makes London remarkable is not just how much it has changed, but how much it remembers. Beneath modern streets lie medieval foundations. Beneath office buildings lie vanished palaces. The past is never far away here. It's just hidden. Sometimes I wish I could step into this city as it was in the 1600s, to walk across Old London Bridge when it was still lined with houses, to hear the noise of the river traffic, to smell the smoke, the markets, the river air, even just for a single day. For now, these AI reconstructions are the closest we can get. They don't replace history, but they help us imagine it more clearly. They let us move through spaces that no longer exist and see the city not as a museum piece, but as a living place, shaped by people, choices, and chance. If there's another city, another time period, or another lost world you'd like to explore, let me know. I'd love to continue this journey into the past. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to my channel, like it, and share it. Thank you so much for watching.